Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the space station grow larger on the main screen. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space. This was his first time meeting aliens, and he felt nervous but excited. "Captain, we're getting a message from the station," said Lieutenant Maria Santos from her chair at the communications panel. She looked just as nervous as Jake felt. "Put it through," Jake replied, straightening his uniform. The screen flickered and showed the face of something that definitely wasn't human. The alien had blue-green skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth that seemed too wide for its face. Jake tried not to stare. "Greetings, Captain Morrison," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like it was speaking through water. "I am Ambassador Kethra of the Zelani Confederation. We welcome you to Kepler Station." Jake nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. We're honored to be here for Earth's first formal meeting with the Galactic Council. The past 6 months had been crazy for humanity. First contact had happened when one of Earth's deep space probes picked up alien signals. Then came the incredible discovery that there was a whole community of alien races out there, billions of years old, with technology that made human science look like cave paintings. The Terra Nova was humanity's newest and best ship, built specifically for this mission. It carried Earth's top diplomats, scientists, and military officers. Jake had been chosen to command the mission because of his record in handling first contact situations with isolated human colonies. Nobody had experience with aliens, so they picked the person who was best at dealing with strangers. "Please dock at Bay 7, Ambassador Kethra continued. "We have prepared quarters for your delegation. The Council is eager to learn about your species." Jake smiled. "We're looking forward to it, too." The docking went smoothly. Jake left his second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, in charge of the ship while he joined the diplomatic team heading to the station. The team included Dr. Helen Murphy, Earth's top xenobiologist, and Ambassador Richard Stone, Earth's most experienced diplomat. Walking through the station's corridors felt like stepping into a dream. The walls were covered with patterns that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Aliens of all shapes and sizes passed by, some floating, some walking on more legs than Jake could count, others that looked like living crystals. "This place is incredible," Dr. Murphy whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look at that one over there. It's like a walking tree." Ambassador Stone stayed focused on business. "Remember, we're here to make a good impression. Humanity's future in this galaxy depends on these next few days." They met Ambassador Kethra in a large room filled with comfortable chairs designed for different body types. The Zelani ambassador was tall and thin, with skin that changed color slightly as it spoke. Jake learned that this was how the Zelani showed emotions. "Your species is quite young," Kethra explained, its skin turning a soft green color. "Most council members have been traveling between stars for millions of years. We are curious about how you develop space travel so quickly." Dr. Murphy leaned forward. "We've always been explorers. Even when we were limited to our own planet, humans were always looking for new places to go, new things to discover." "Interesting," Kethra replied. "Most species develop space travel out of necessity, when their home worlds become overcrowded or their resources run out. You developed it out of curiosity?" The conversation continued for hours. Jake found himself relaxing as he learned more about the galaxy's peaceful nature. According to Kethra, major wars were rare. Most conflicts were settled through negotiation or economic pressure. The Council maintained peace through careful diplomacy and mutual benefit. "Violence is considered primitive," Kethra explained. "Civilized species solve problems through discussion and compromise. We have not seen a major war in over 10,000 years." Jake nodded, but something about that statement bothered him. He had studied military history his entire career, and he knew that peace only lasted when people were willing to fight for it. But he kept his thoughts to himself. The alarm started blaring just as they were finishing their first day of talks. Red lights flashed throughout the station, and Kethra's skin turned a dark purple color that Jake guessed meant fear. "What's happening?" Ambassador Stone asked. Kethra was already moving toward a communication panel. "Pirates," it said, its voice shaking. "The Vorthen Syndicate has found us." Jake's military training kicked in immediately. "How many ships?" "3 battle cruisers," Kethra replied after checking the panel. "They're demanding we surrender all cargo and passengers." "What's the station's defense capability?" Jake asked. Kethra looked confused. "Defense? We have no weapons." "This is a diplomatic station." Jake stared at the alien. "No weapons at all?" "Violence is not permitted on council stations," Kethra explained. "We will have to surrender and hope they only take our cargo." "Like hell we will," Jake muttered under his breath. The pirate's message came through the station's speakers a few minutes later. The voice was rough and threatening, speaking in the common galactic language that Jake's translator converted to English. "This is Commander Vex of the Vorthen Syndicate. You have 1 hour to prepare all cargo and passengers for transfer to our ships. Anyone who resists will be killed." Jake watched in amazement as every alien in the room immediately began preparing for surrender. They moved slowly and carefully, following what seemed to be a well-practiced routine. Kethra was gathering important documents and sealing them in a special container. "This is standard procedure," Kethra explained when it saw Jake's expression. "We comply with their demands and they will eventually leave us alone." "What about the passengers?" Jake asked. "They will be ransomed back to their families," Kethra said sadly. "It is unfortunate, but this is how these situations are handled." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "No, it's not." He activated his communicator. "Morrison to Terra Nova. Carter here, Captain. We're tracking the pirate ships. They're older models, but they outgun us 3-1. Ben, I need you to listen carefully. How many crew members do we have aboard?" 43, sir. Why?" "Because we're about to show these pirates what humans do when someone threatens innocent people." There was a pause. "Sir, the diplomatic mission." "The diplomatic mission just became a rescue operation. I want all available crew armed and ready for boarding action." "And Ben, contact Earth Command. Tell them we're about to demonstrate human military doctrine to the galaxy." Jake turned to face the group of aliens who were staring at him with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. Kethra's skin had turned almost white. "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Stone said carefully, "we cannot risk starting an interstellar incident on our first day of contact." "We're not starting anything," Jake replied. "We're finishing it." He looked around the room at the aliens who had accepted defeat before the battle even began. "Ambassador Kethra, I need you to understand something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate with pirates. And we sure as hell don't hand over innocent people to criminals." "But they have superior numbers," Kethra protested. "Resistance is illogical." Jake smiled grimly. "Maybe that's what makes us different. We've never been very good at logic when it comes to protecting people." The next hour would teach the galaxy its first lesson about humanity. When faced with impossible odds, humans don't calculate their chances of winning. They calculate how much damage they can do before they go down. And sometimes that makes all the difference. Dr. Lisa Parker floated in the zero-gravity section of Horizon Base, checking the atmospheric readings on her tablet. The research station had been her home for 8 months now, and she still marveled at working alongside 12 different alien species. Each day brought new discoveries about how different life forms had evolved across the galaxy. "Dr. Parker, could you check the readings in Section 7? Called out Dr. Zixith, her colleague from the insectoid Kree species. The alien's translator made its clicking sounds into English, though the mechanical voice never quite captured the musical quality of the original language. "Already done," Lisa replied, pushing herself along the corridor using handholds. "Everything looks normal." The station was built like a giant ring, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity in the outer sections. The center remained in zero gravity for experiments that required weightlessness. Lisa had learned to move through both environments with ease, something that impressed her alien colleagues who seemed to prefer one or the other. She found Dr. Zixth in the main laboratory, its 4 arms working on different experiments at once. The Kree were incredibly efficient, able to multitask in ways that made humans look clumsy. But Lisa had noticed something interesting about her alien friends over the past months. They were efficient, but they weren't persistent. "Dr. Parker?" came another voice from across the lab. This one belonged to Dr. Morgan, one of the aquatic marine species. The blue-skinned alien was working in a water-filled tank, its gills fluttering as it spoke through the liquid. "The atmospheric processor in Section 12 is showing some unusual readings." Lisa checked her tablet. "I'll take a look." She made her way to Section 12, passing through the corridors that connected different parts of the station. The walls were covered with soft, glowing panels that provided light without the harsh brightness that some species found uncomfortable. Everything about the station was designed for cooperation between different forms of life. The atmospheric processor was a massive machine that kept the air breathable for all the species on the station. It was incredibly complex with backup systems and safety protocols that the aliens assured her would prevent any serious problems. Lisa was reviewing the machine's diagnostic reports when the first alarm sounded. "Attention all personnel," came the voice of the station's AI through the speakers. "We have detected a failure in the primary atmospheric system. Please remain calm and follow emergency procedures." Lisa felt her heart rate increase, but she forced herself to stay focused. She had trained for emergencies like this during her preparation for the mission. The backup systems would keep them safe while repairs were made, but then the second alarm sounded. "Attention all personnel. Secondary atmospheric system failure detected. Initiating emergency protocols." Lisa's training kicked in completely now. She pulled up the station's emergency procedures on her tablet and started following them step by step. The first thing was to check on her alien colleagues and make sure everyone was safe. She found Dr. Zixt in the main lab, but the Kree was moving much more slowly than usual. Its normally quick movements had become sluggish and deliberate. "Dr. Zixt, are you all right?" Lisa asked. "Entering conservation mode," the alien replied, its voice becoming slower and more mechanical. "Must preserve energy for life support." Lisa watched in fascination as the Kree's forearms folded against its body and its compound eyes began to dim. Within minutes, Dr. Zixt had entered a state that looked almost like sleep. But Lisa knew from her xenobiology training that it was actually a form of hibernation. She found Dr. Morgan in a similar state. The Marin had sealed itself inside its water tank and was floating motionless, its gills barely moving. According to her readings, the alien's metabolism had slowed to almost nothing. Lisa checked on the other aliens throughout the station and found the same thing happening everywhere. Each species had its own version of emergency shutdown. Some went into hibernation, others slowed their breathing and heart rates, and a few actually stopped most of their bodily functions entirely. It was an incredible display of evolutionary adaptation. Each species had developed perfect survival mechanisms for emergencies. They could survive for days or even weeks on minimal resources while help arrived, but Lisa realized something that made her blood run cold. She was the only one still functioning at full capacity. Her communicator crackled to life. "Dr. Parker, this is Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks from the Terra Nova. We're docked at Bay 3. What's your status?" Lisa had never been so happy to hear a human voice. "Ryan, thank God. We have a major atmospheric failure. All the alien crew members have gone into some kind of emergency shutdown mode." "Are they okay?" "They're alive, but they're not really conscious. I think it's an automatic response to conserve energy during emergencies." There was a pause. "Lisa, we need to get those atmospheric systems back online. How bad is the damage?" Lisa was already moving toward the main engineering section. "I'm checking now. The primary and secondary systems are both down. We're running on emergency reserves. How long do we have?" Lisa checked her tablet. "At current consumption rates, maybe 6 hours before the air becomes toxic to most species." "But Ryan, there's something you need to know. The atmospheric system isn't just broken. It's been damaged by some kind of energy surge. We need to physically repair it, not just reset it." I'm on my way with a repair team. 20 minutes later, Lisa met Ryan and 3 other crew members from the Terra Nova at the main engineering section. The humans looked alert and ready for action, a stark contrast to the aliens who were all in various states of shutdown throughout the station. "Show me what we're dealing with," Ryan said. Lisa led them to the atmospheric processor. The machine was massive, filling an entire room with pipes, filters, and processing units. Several sections were clearly damaged, with burn marks and twisted metal showing where the energy surge had struck. "This is going to take hours to repair," said Chief Engineer Carlos Mendez, examining the damage. "Maybe 8 or 10 hours of continuous work." "We don't have that long," Lisa replied. "The emergency reserves will run out in 6 hours, and that's if we don't do any heavy work that increases our oxygen consumption." Ryan was already pulling tools from his repair kit. "Then we'd better get started." Lisa watched in amazement as the humans began working. They moved with purpose and energy, completely ignoring the fact that they were working in an environment that was slowly becoming toxic. While every other species on the station had shut down to conserve resources, the humans were pushing themselves harder. "Lisa, I need you to monitor the atmospheric readings while we work," Ryan said. "Let us know if anything changes." "Shouldn't you be conserving energy too?" Lisa asked. "I mean, biologically speaking, it would make sense to slow down during an emergency." Carlos looked up from where he was welding a damaged pipe. "Slow down during an emergency? That's the opposite of what humans do. What do you mean?" Ryan paused in his work to explain. "Other species seem to have evolved to survive emergencies by shutting down and waiting for help. Humans evolved to survive by working harder when things get dangerous." Lisa had studied human biology extensively, but she had never thought about it that way. "You mean our stress response is different?" "Completely different," Ryan continued. Returning to his repairs, "When humans face danger, our bodies pump adrenaline and other chemicals that make us stronger and faster. Our heart rate increases, our reflexes improve, and we become more focused. We don't slow down during emergencies, we speed up." The next several hours proved his point. Lisa watched as the human repair team worked with an intensity that would have been impossible for most species. They didn't take breaks. They didn't slow down when the air became thinner. They didn't stop when the temperature started rising due to the failing environmental controls. Instead, they worked faster. "Atmospheric toxicity is reaching dangerous levels," Lisa reported after 4 hours of continuous work. "How dangerous?" Ryan asked, not stopping his work on the primary processor. "Dangerous enough that most species would be unconscious by now." "Good thing we're not most species," Carlos replied, sparks flying from his welding torch. Lisa realized something that made her both proud and terrified. The humans weren't just working through conditions that would incapacitate other species. They were working more efficiently as conditions got worse. Their stress response was actually making them better at their jobs. "Primary atmospheric system is back online," announced engineer Kelly Murphy after 6 hours of work. "Secondary system restored," added technician Sam Davis minutes later. Lisa watched her readings return to normal as fresh, clean air began flowing through the station. Around her, the various alien species began to wake up from their emergency states. Dr. Zixith's eyes brightened, and Dr. Morgan began moving normally in its tank. "Remarkable," said Dr. Zixth once it was fully conscious. "You maintained full activity during the entire emergency." "We had to," Lisa replied. "The repairs couldn't wait." "But the energy expenditure must have been enormous," Dr. Morgan observed. "How did you survive such exertion during atmospheric failure?" Lisa looked at Ryan, who was finally showing signs of exhaustion now that the crisis was over. "I think we're built differently than most species." Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center of Proxima Station, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Joint Research Facility orbited a small planet in the Proxima system, home to scientists from 15 different species working together on advanced technology projects. It was supposed to be one of the most peaceful places in the galaxy. The alarm that had been sounding for the past 10 minutes told a different story. Colonel, we have confirmation, reported Lieutenant Jack Hamilton from the communications station. It's definitely the Kraxan Empire. 3 battleships and 6 escort vessels. Amy felt her stomach tighten. She had read about the Kraxan during her briefing for this assignment. They were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, known for taking whatever they wanted from weaker civilizations. Their technology was centuries ahead of most other species, making resistance seem pointless. What do they want? Amy asked. They're demanding we surrender the station and all research materials, Jack replied. They say they'll give us 1 hour to comply before they start shooting. Amy looked around the command center. Besides her small team of human military advisors, the station was staffed entirely by civilian scientists. Most of them were aliens, who had never seen combat in their lives. Dr. Weltar, the station's Zilani administrator, approached her with obvious fear in his large, dark eyes. Colonel Rodriguez, we must prepare for surrender. The Kraxan have never been defeated in battle. Have they ever fought humans before? Amy asked. Well, no, but Dr. Weltar's skin changed to a pale yellow color. Your species is very new to the galaxy. You cannot possibly stand against technology that is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Amy checked her tablet, reviewing the station's defensive capabilities. They had basic shields and a few light weapons, designed more for asteroid defense than military combat. The human military team consisted of just 12 people, barely enough to crew the station's weapons. How many non-combatants are on the station? Amy asked. 437, replied Dr. Weltar. Scientists, technicians, and support staff from 15 different species. Amy nodded. Get them all to the emergency shelters now. Colonel, you cannot be serious about fighting, Dr. Weltar protested. The Kraxan will destroy the station if we resist. They might destroy it anyway, Amy replied. At least this way we have a chance. She activated the station's communication system. Attention all personnel, this is Colonel Rodriguez. We are under attack by hostile forces. All non-essential personnel report to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. The next few minutes were chaos as hundreds of aliens rushed through the corridors toward the reinforced sections of the station. Amy watched them go, noting how many different species were represented. Some were tall and thin, others short and stocky. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal, but they all had one thing in common. They were all terrified. Colonel, the Kraxan are moving into attack position, reported Sergeant Tony Martinez from the tactical station. Their lead ship is powering up weapons. Amy looked at the tactical display. The Kraxan ships were massive, each one larger than the entire station. Their hulls were covered with weapons that could probably destroy a small moon. According to the computer, their shields were strong enough to absorb anything the station could throw at them. Ma'am, incoming message from the Kraxan, Jack announced. Put it through. The main screen filled with the image of a Kraxan commander. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a machine, with metallic implants covering half of its face. Its eyes glowed red, and its voice was electronically enhanced. I am War Commander Thexville of the Kraxan Empire. You have failed to surrender as ordered. Your station will be destroyed, and all aboard will be taken as prisoners. Amy stepped forward. This is Colonel Amy Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. This station is under our protection. Thexville's mechanical laugh was harsh and grating. Earth Defense Force? Your species has barely learned to travel between stars. You dare to threaten the Kraxan Empire? I'm not threatening you, Amy replied calmly. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to turn around and leave this system. If you don't, we'll make you leave. Impossible. Our shields cannot be penetrated by your primitive weapons, Amy smiled. We'll see about that. The transmission ended, and Amy immediately began issuing orders. Tony, I want a full analysis of their shield patterns. Jack, monitor all their communications. If they're coordinating their attack, I want to know about it. Colonel, with respect, what's the plan? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the weapons station. Our energy weapons can't even scratch their shields. Then we don't use energy weapons, Amy replied. What else do we have? Sarah checked her systems. Some kinetic rounds for asteroid defense, a few mining charges left over from the station's construction, and... She paused. The waste disposal system. Amy raised an eyebrow. The waste disposal system? It's basically a mass driver, designed to shoot garbage into the local star. But it could probably launch other things too. Like what? Sarah thought for a moment. Like those mining charges you mentioned. Amy felt a smile spreading across her face. How accurate is it? Pretty accurate. It's designed to hit a target millions of miles away. The first Kraxan attack came 5 minutes later. Energy beams lanced out from their ships, striking the station's shields. The defensive barriers held, but barely. Warning lights flashed throughout the command center. Shields down to 60%, Tony reported. They're not even trying very hard. Amy watched the tactical display, noting how the Kraxan ships moved in perfect formation. Their attacks were coordinated and methodical, designed to wear down the station's defenses slowly. They're playing with us, she realized. They could probably destroy us quickly if they wanted to. So what do we do? Jack asked. Amy studied the enemy ships more carefully. We do what humans do best. We improvise. She opened a channel to the engineering section. Chief Roberts, I need you to do something that's probably impossible. Try me, Colonel, came the reply from Chief Engineer Mark Roberts. I need you to rig the waste disposal system to launch mining charges. Can you do that? Give me 10 minutes. While Chief Roberts worked, Amy continued studying the Kraxan attack pattern. The enemy ships were maintaining a perfect formation, with their shields overlapping for maximum protection. It was textbook military tactics, exactly what she would expect from a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Colonel, I've got something, Tony announced. Their shields have a recharge cycle. It's only about 2 seconds, but there's a brief moment when they're vulnerable. How brief? 0.3 seconds, Amy shook her head. Not enough time to target. And fire. Unless ... double quote. Sarah was studying her weapons panel. Unless we fire before they drop their shields. That's impossible. We can't predict when they'll drop them. Actually, we can, Tony said excitedly. They're following a pattern. The shields cycle every 15 seconds, always at the same time. Amy felt her pulse quicken. Are you sure? Positive. It's like they're following a computer program. Chief Roberts, how are those mining charges coming? Ready to go, Colonel? I've got 6 of them loaded in the waste disposal system. Amy looked at her team. They were all young, inexperienced, and facing impossible odds. But they were human. And humans had a reputation for doing impossible things. Here's what we're going to do, she began. We're going to time our shots to hit during their shield cycle. It's only a third of a second window, but that's all we need. Colonel, the timing has to be perfect, Sarah warned. If we're off by even a fraction of a second, the charges will just bounce off their shields. Then we won't be off, Amy replied. Tony, I want you to count down the shield cycles. Sarah, you fire on my command. The next few minutes were the longest of Amy's life. She watched the tactical display timing the enemy ship's movements. The Kraxan continued their methodical attack, completely unaware that the humans were planning something. Shield cycle in 5 seconds, Tony announced. Amy held her breath. 4.1. Fire! The mining charge shot out from the station like a bullet from a gun. It crossed the distance to the nearest Kraxan ship in seconds, striking just as the enemy's shields flickered during their recharge cycle. The explosion was spectacular. The mining charge, designed to blast through solid rock, tore through the Kraxan ship's hull like it was made of paper. The battleship staggered, its formation breaking as it tried to compensate for the damage. Direct hit, Sarah shouted. Their main engine is offline. Amy allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before focusing on the next target. Again, next shield cycle. The second shot was even more accurate. The mining charge struck the second Kraxan ship just as its shields cycled, punching through the hull and causing a massive explosion in what looked like their weapons bay. Impossible, came a transmission from the Kraxin commander. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Amy opened a channel. Apparently they can. Do you want to leave now, or do you want to see what else we can do? There was a long pause. Then the Kraxin ships began to withdraw. This is not over, human, Vexville transmitted. The Kraxin Empire will remember this. Amy watched the enemy ships disappear. Captain Steve Foster watched the tactical display aboard the destroyer Liberator as more enemy ships appeared at the edge of the New Geneva system. The hegemony of Zarn had been blockading the human colony for 3 days now, demanding that the colonists surrender their independence and submit to hegemony rule. Sir, that makes 47 hegemony ships, reported Ensign Peter Walsh from the sensor station. They're maintaining position around the planet, blocking all shipping lanes. Steve nodded grimly. The Liberator was the only military vessel in the system when the blockade began. Against 47 enemy ships, the odds were impossible. But Steve had already made his decision 3 days ago when the first hegemony ships arrived. Any word from the other human colonies? He asked. Yes, sir, replied Lieutenant Commander Nancy Coleman from Communications. We're getting responses from all over the sector. Ships are coming. Steve allowed himself a small smile. The call for help had gone out on the first day of the blockade, transmitted on every human frequency in the sector. The message was simple. New Geneva was under attack and needed help. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Sir, the cargo hauler Mountain Star just dropped out of hyperspace, Peter announced. She's broadcasting human identification codes? A cargo hauler? Steve asked. Yes, sir, but she's been modified. I'm reading weapon signatures that weren't there in the original ship design. Steve pulled up the ship's profile on his screen. The Mountain Star was a civilian cargo vessel designed to carry supplies between colonies. But according to his sensors, someone had welded military-grade weapons onto its hull and reinforced its shields. Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Mountain Star, Nancy reported. Put it through. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a middle-aged woman with grease stains on her coveralls and determination in her eyes. This is Captain Jennifer Wells of the Mountain Star. We heard New Geneva needed help. Captain Wells, this is a military situation, Steve replied. Civilian vessels should stay clear of the combat zone? Jennifer's expression didn't change. Captain Foster, my daughter lives on New Geneva. She's 8 years old. So, with all due respect, this isn't just a military situation anymore. Before Steve could respond, Peter spoke up again. Sir, more ships dropping out of hyperspace. I count 12 vessels, all civilian designs, but showing weapon modifications. Steve watched his tactical display fill with new contacts. Mining ships with plasma cutters converted to weapons. Passenger liners with improvised missile launchers. Even a few personal yachts that had somehow been fitted with military hardware. Sir, we're being hailed by multiple ships, Nancy announced. They all want to know where they're needed most. Steve stared at the display in amazement. These weren't military vessels with trained crews. They were ordinary humans who had dropped everything they were doing to come help defend a colony they might never have visited. Captain Foster, came another voice over the communications system. This is Captain Robert Hayes of the mining vessel Deep Digger. We've got 43 ships in our convoy, all ready for action. Captain Hayes, these aren't military vessels, Steve protested. Your crews aren't trained for combat. Maybe not, Robert replied, but they're human. And humans protect their own. Dr. Patricia Hayes, the chief administrator of New Geneva Colony, appeared on Steve's screen from the planet's surface. Her face was pale but determined. Captain Foster, I'm tracking the ships arriving in our system. How many do we have now? Steve checked his display. 86 and counting, ma'am. More arriving every hour. 86 human ships against 47 hegemony vessels, Patricia said thoughtfully. Those are better odds than we had yesterday. Ma'am, most of these are civilian ships. They're not designed for military action. Patricia's expression hardened. Captain, do you know why I'm on New Geneva? No, ma'am. I came here because my great-grandmother was one of the original colonists. She came to this planet with nothing. but a dream of building something better for her children. 3 generations of my family have lived and died on this world. She paused, looking directly at Steve through the screen. The hegemony wants us to surrender our independence. They want us to give up everything my family built and become subjects of their empire. Do you think any human in this system is going to let that happen? Steve understood then what he was witnessing. This wasn't just a military response to an attack. This was something much more powerful and much more dangerous. "Sir, transmission from the hegemony fleet," Nancy announced. "Put it through." The alien that appeared on screen was tall and thin, with silver skin and large black eyes. Its voice was translated into English by the ship's computer. "I am Fleet Commander Kelther of the Hegemony of Zarn. We demand to speak with the human military commander." "This is Captain Steve Foster, commanding the Human Defense Force." "Captain Foster, you are vastly outnumbered. We count nearly 100 human vessels, but most appear to be civilian ships. Surely you cannot expect untrained crews to stand against the military might of the hegemony." Steve looked at his tactical display, where the symbols representing human ships continued to multiply. "Commander Kelther, let me explain something about humans. We don't see civilian ships and military ships. We see our ships. That is illogical. Civilian vessels are not designed for combat. Maybe not originally," Steve admitted. "But humans have a tendency to modify things when necessary." As if to prove his point, Peter announced another arrival. "Sir, the passenger liner Star Voyager just dropped out of hyperspace. She's been completely refitted. I'm reading enough firepower to match a heavy cruiser." Commander Kelther's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. "This is unprecedented. Civilian populations do not engage in military actions. Human civilian populations do," Steve replied. "Commander, you made a mistake when you chose to threaten New Geneva. You didn't just threaten one colony. You threatened human families, human children, human dreams. We offered them the chance to surrender peacefully. And they refused, so did every other human who heard about it." Steve could see confusion in the alien commander's expression. "This response is completely irrational. The economic cost of converting civilian vessels to military use far exceeds the value of one colony." "You're right," Steve agreed. "It is completely irrational, but that's what makes humans dangerous. We don't fight for economic reasons, we fight for each other." The transmission ended, and Steve turned his attention back to coordinating the growing human fleet. Ships continued to arrive throughout the day, each one modified for combat in whatever way its crew could manage. "Sir, we now have over 150 ships in the system," Peter reported. "The hegemony fleet is still holding position, but they're not advancing toward the planet." Steve wasn't surprised. The alien commanders were probably trying to understand what they were facing. In their experience, wars were fought between military forces for specific objectives. They had never encountered a species where ordinary citizens would travel across space to fight for a planet they had never seen. "Captain Foster," came Patricia's voice from the planet, "I've been monitoring the hegemony communications. They're calling for reinforcements." "How many?" Steve asked. "Unknown, but they're reporting the situation as unprecedented. They're telling their superiors that humans appear to have no distinction between military and civilian populations." Steve considered this. In a way, they're right. When humans are threatened, every human becomes a potential warrior. "Sir, message from the Mountain Star," Nancy announced. "Captain Wells says her ship is ready for action." Steve opened a channel to the converted cargo hauler. "Captain Wells, what's your ship's status?" "We've got plasma cannons, missile launchers, and enough armor plating to stop a small asteroid," Jennifer replied cheerfully. "My crew includes 2 former military engineers, a demolitions expert, and my neighbor who used to work on mining equipment. We're ready to show these aliens what happens when they threaten human children." Steve realized that the hegemony commanders were facing something they had never encountered before. Most species in the galaxy had clear distinctions between their military forces and civilian populations. Wars were fought by professional soldiers for political or economic reasons, but humans were different. When threatened, they didn't just send their military, they sent everyone. Sir, the hegemony fleet is beginning to withdraw, Peter announced. Steve wasn't surprised. The alien commanders had come to blockade one colony defended by a single destroyer. Instead, they found themselves facing an entire human fleet that had materialized from across the sector. Captain Foster, this is Commander Kelther. We are withdrawing from this system. Wise choice, Commander. This situation will be reported to the Galactic Council. Your species' response to this incident is highly irregular. Steve smiled. Commander, you haven't seen anything yet? This is just what happens when you threaten one human colony. Imagine what would happen if you threatened Earth. The transmission ended, and Steve watched the hegemony ships disappear into hyperspace. Around him, the bridge crew was celebrating, but Steve was thinking about the implications of what had just happened. Word of this would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that attacking humans meant facing not just their military. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representative Vextai of the ancient ethereal collective floated above the central platform, its translucent form shimmering with what other species had learned to recognize as deep concern. Around the circular chamber, delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in stunned silence as the reports continued. The human response to the New Geneva incident has been analyzed by our best xenopsychologists, Vextai announced, its voice carrying through the chamber's translation systems. The conclusions are deeply disturbing. Ambassador Kethra of the Zelani Confederation shifted nervously in its seat. Since its first encounter with Captain Morrison at Kepler Station, it had filed dozens of reports about human behavior. Each one had made the Council more uneasy. The humans mobilized over 200 civilian vessels, Vextai continued. These were not military ships. They were cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, and personal craft. All were converted to combat configuration within days. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. In the galaxy's long history, no species had ever turned their entire civilian fleet into a military force. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in the observer section reserved for humanity's representative. She had been invited to explain her species' actions, though she suspected the Council had already made up their minds about humans. The economic cost of these conversions, Vextai went on, exceeded the total value of the colony they were defending. By any logical analysis, the human response was completely irrational. Perhaps they were protecting something more valuable than economics, Admiral Sullivan said quietly. Vextai form flickered, showing agitation. Admiral Sullivan, your species has been granted permission to observe these proceedings. Please do not interrupt. Kate nodded but remained ready to speak when called upon. She had studied the other species in the galaxy extensively since humanity's introduction to the Council. What she had learned both fascinated and worried her. Our analysis reveals that humans wage war in ways completely foreign to civilized species, Vextai continued. While we fight for territory, resources, or political advantage, humans appear to fight for concepts. The chamber filled with quiet discussion as delegates considered this statement. Fighting for concepts was something most species found difficult to understand. They fight for freedom, Vextai explained. They fight for family. They fight for ideals that have no physical form. Most disturbing of all, they fight for survival, in ways that suggest they view every conflict as potentially existential. Commander Kelther of the Hegemony of Zarn stood to address the chamber. The tall, silver-skinned alien's voice was filled with frustration. Representatives of the Council, I commanded the fleet at New Geneva. I have fought in dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. I understand military tactics and strategy. But what the humans did, there was not military action. It was something else entirely. Explain, requested Chancellor Morthek of the Central Worlds Alliance. They did not send their military to defend the colony, Telther said. They sent their people, all of their people. Farmers, merchants, miners, families with children. When we scanned the arriving ships, we found crew members who had never seen combat, working alongside weapons they had built with their own hands. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The idea of non-military populations engaging in warfare was almost incomprehensible to most species. The most disturbing part, Kelther continued, was their coordination. They had no central command structure, no formal military hierarchy. Yet they moved and fought as one organism. Every ship seemed to know what every other ship was doing. Vexti S form pulsed brighter. This brings us to our most troubling discovery. Humans do not fight as individuals or even as nations. They fight as a species. Kate felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes focusing on her. She had known this moment would come eventually. Ever since first contact, human behavior had been confusing and frightening the galaxy's established civilizations. When one human colony is threatened, Vexti went on, humans from across the galaxy respond. They do not calculate cost versus benefit. They do not consider political implications. They simply come. Because it's the right thing to do, Kate said, unable to remain silent any longer. The chamber fell silent. Vexti's form flickered with what Kate had learned was annoyance. Admiral Sullivan, you were not given permission to speak. With respect, Representative Vexti, my species is being discussed. I think we deserve a chance to explain ourselves. Chancellor Morthak gestured for Kate to continue. The council will hear from the human representative. Kate stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Around her, hundreds of alien faces watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to fear. You're right about almost everything, she began. We do fight for concepts. We do treat every conflict as potentially existential. And yes, we do respond as a species when any of our people are threatened. Why? Asked Ambassador Kethra. Your economic and political systems would function more efficiently if you calculated costs and benefits before responding to conflicts. Kate smiled. Because we're not interested in efficiency when our family is in danger. Family? Vexti pulsed with confusion. The colonists at New Geneva were not related to the humans who came to their aid. Yes, they were, Kate replied firmly. They're human. That makes them family. The concept seemed to break something in the aliens' understanding. Kate could see confusion and fear spreading through the chamber. You consider your entire species to be family? Chancellor Morthak asked slowly. Every human child, every human parent, every human dreamer, Kate confirmed. When someone threatens any of us, they threaten all of us. This is unprecedented, whispered Dr. Ilksenuth of the Scientific Consortium. No species has ever maintained such strong genetic loyalty across interstellar distances. Kate realized she was witnessing something historic. For millions of years, the galaxy's species had evolved past what they considered primitive tribal behaviors. They had developed sophisticated political and economic systems that prioritized efficiency and logic over emotional responses. But humans had never lost their pack instincts. They had simply expanded their definition of the pack to include their entire species. Admiral Sullivan, Vexti said carefully, our analysis suggests that humans are capable of total war in ways other species cannot comprehend. Is this accurate? Kate considered the question seriously. If you mean are we willing to sacrifice everything to protect our people, then yes. If you mean would we fight to the last human to prevent our extinction, then yes. Even if the cost was the destruction of your entire civilization? Especially then, Kate replied. What's the point of preserving a civilization if there's no one left to live in it? The chamber erupted in alarmed discussions. Kate could hear fragments of conversation in dozens of languages, all expressing the same basic fear. Humans were a species that could not be defeated through conventional means because they refused to accept defeat. The Council faces a difficult decision, Vexti announced once the chamber had quieted. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy appears inevitable. Their refusal to surrender, their adaptability in combat, their species-wide coordination, and their willingness to fight total wars makes them potentially the most dangerous military force in galactic history. Kate felt her heart racing. Were they about to declare war on humanity? However, Vexti continued, our long-range sensors have detected something that changes our situation dramatically. The chamber's main display activated, showing a star map of the galaxy. At the edge of the image, dark shapes were visible approaching from outside the galactic rim. The Devourer fleet has been detected, Vextai announced. They will reach the outer systems in approximately 6 months. Kate had heard whispers of the Devourers during her diplomatic briefings. They were an extragalactic threat that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but empty space. For the first time in galactic history, Vextai said quietly, every species faces true extinction. Our advanced technology, our sophisticated diplomacy, our efficient economic systems, none of these can stop the Devourers. Chancellor Morthuk stood slowly. The Council has never faced an enemy that could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or defeated through conventional warfare. Kate began to understand where this was leading. Admiral Sullivan, Vextai addressed her directly. The Council has a question for humanity. Your species has demonstrated the ability to fight when fighting seems impossible, to adapt when adaptation seems pointless, and to continue struggling when any rational species would surrender. The chamber fell completely silent. Will your people fight for us the way you fight for yourselves? Kate looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces filled with hope and fear. These civilizations had spent millions of years becoming more sophisticated, more efficient, more logical. In the process, they had lost something that humans had never given up, the willingness to fight impossible battles for the people they cared about. Representative Vextai, Kate said clearly, you're asking the wrong question. What is the correct question? Kate smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt completely confident. The question isn't whether we'll fight for you the way we fight for ourselves.